Well, hello out there. This is Sam Kilmer, your host of FinTech Hustle. I'm glad to be with you again for this is a special episode. This is our FinTech Hustle flashback episode, and I'm joined by a rock star insider cast here that I'd like to tell you a little bit about and get going here. I think there's going to be some familiar faces you see here. For starters, Mary Wisniewski, one of our FinTech Hustle co-hosts. Former editor at American Banker and rockstar editor here at Cornerstone Advisors. Also, our chief research officer at Cornerstone Advisors, the Snarkinator-in-Chief, Ron Shevlin. Thanks for joining us, Ron, and for co-hosting. And actually, we'll talk about this in a little bit, really helping to start this thing off a few years ago. And then Dominick, partner and often co-host on the road with me at some of these industry events. Thanks for joining us, Al. And a name and a face you may be less familiar with, but you should be. And that is Bailee Wishart, who is our digital media specialist at Cornerstone Advisors. She actually keeps, whenever we're doing any of these recordings, she keeps the train on the rails, if you will, behind the scenes. And I felt like it was really important, in particular for this episode, for Bailee not to be behind the scenes. And something you may not know, even if you do know Bailee or know Cornerstone, is that actually Bailee, in addition to being our production expert here, she actually has a podcast of her own you can check out there on LinkedIn. She's got that in her profile, and she's out there on Insta as well, and all the hip places. And she also has I love those Barbie headphones you're rocking right there, Bailee. So well done on that.
Got to cap off 2023 with the Barbie pink.
I know, you got to do it. And I'll just start off right off the bat by saying, when we first started talking about all the great moments that we've thought about on FinTech Hustle and just sort of things that resonated, I recall you and I and Mary, as I recall, were having a chat. I think I was on a call where I had to pull over on the side of the road. I was driving back from a client engagement. And you threw out an idea for this, what we're doing here today. And would you tell us a little bit about the idea? Because it's all yours, as I recall, and you and Mary kind of threw it down. I thought it was great. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I think the big thing was we were trying to kind of dream up a way to kind of cap off the year and do something fun with FinTech Hustle. And there's this series of videos that Vanity Fair does every year with Billie Eilish, where Billie Eilish will actually do the same interview every year, answer the same questions every year, but she'll actually get to look back and see what her answers were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. I think they're on year 7, and I believe year 8 is supposed to come out sometime this month, I believe. So pretty crazy because, I think even for Billie Eilish being as young as she is, she probably got to see herself grow up through these videos, but figured that it might be kind of a fun way to just kind of watch FinTech Hustle grow up, look back at maybe some of the moments that happened on the show in the past and kind of get some real and raw reactions to past FinTech Hustle in the present. So shot that idea out, and sounds like you liked it because we're doing it. So yeah.
Well, so far we like it. We'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah. Does this mean that is Sam Billie Eilish? Is
Sam
he
is.
like
Sam is.
her brother Phineas? Like, is Mary Billie Eilish? Like, help orient Ron and myself, because as the elder statesman, we need to understand the roles that we get to play.
I believe in this scenario, Sam is our Billie Eilish. Though we may or may not ask him to sing on this.
I think what she was really saying was, "Hey Sam, don't quit your day job." So that's pretty good. I'll try to live up to that. But so anyway, we really appreciate you coming up with that. And to your point, I think in this case, some of this will be from the last year, but we've got a few things that may be a little bit older than that. But we just thought it seemed like it made a lot of sense, and I thought maybe one way we could start off is to really start at the beginning. That Ron and I, this is the way I recall it. Ron, maybe you remember it a little bit differently. We were just having a chat one day, and we said, "Wouldn't it be great?" Sort of reminded me a little bit of like Steve Williams when he told us about when they first started doing Gonzo Banker. Wouldn't it be great if we just, wrote some things that we thought were cool? You and I were like, wouldn't it be great if we just got a few people together from the industry and had a conversation about what's going on out there in FinTech land. And for our first episode, which we didn't even call FinTech Hustle, we had Kara Parkey from MX and AFT, as well as Scott Mills, who I happen to know from AFT, but you and I, Ron, had known from William Mills. And I don't know if that's the way you remember it, but I just remember Kara being right there from the beginning. And somewhere in the middle of that episode, she said, we don't have unfortunately, we're still a work in progress here. And I don't think we couldn't locate the video, but she said, this was during the pandemic, mind you. So we started this whole thing while everybody was at home. So it was a virtual session. And she said, the hustle's just different now. And she was talking about the way that people reach, using content and meeting people and those things. And we were so inspired by it afterwards that you and I and Steve Williams and a couple others got together and we said, we should just go ask Kara, hey, do you mind if we steal that and actually name the podcast after it? Is that the way you remember it, Ron, or do I have it all wrong?
Sam, I don't remember what I did yesterday. You're asking me about 3.5 years ago. But yeah, I remember Kara saying, the hustle is different. And I think that's when the light bulb went off for both of us. That was like, that's it. That's what this is about. It's about the FinTech hustle. And we just loved the connotation that not only was it relevant to today, but, the whole 70s flashback aspect of it. So, yeah, I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, I know, Mary, you and Al have also see Kara out there on the road in many of your travels. And anyway, I'll just throw out mad respect to Kara, not just for helping us ultimately give some more identity to what we were trying to do, but just for being someone who cares in the industry and leans into things. And I always say she's one of the best examples. We'll talk about others today, people that are just smart, they're fun, and they get stuff done, which has kind of always been my criteria for who might be a guest out.
Well, I was going to say, throw the shout out also to Scott and William Mills. That agency's done a heck of a job representing a number of tech companies as they try to tell their story a little bit differently. Yeah, how it relates. And so, Kara is an incredible advocate for the industry. I think Scott and his brother and the team at William Mills also deserves a shout out from us, because we've got so many great folks that are doing some really cool things, but if you don't know what they are or who they are, then it's just the tree falling in the woods.
No doubt. Well, I'll tell you, another flashback as we were thinking through things, and Mary, I think this is one that you had identified, was Doug Brown over at NCR, now Voyix. And I don't know, Bailee, can you cue up that clip?
Absolutely.
Apple can sneeze and make $10 billion, right? So I'm not that impressed that their deposit draw was that great, especially on the rate they were using to do it. One other thing, I don't know if everyone in this panel has used it yet, but when you put the money in, it's like the Roach Motel. You can check it in, but you can't check it out. I have been waiting 75 days for $1,000 to come back to me because I was just experimenting with it. So, Apple's the master of UX and brand, and like you're saying, on the deposit draw. However, you got to follow through.
Good stuff. Mary, any thoughts on that?
My main thought is I always appreciate Doug Brown's candor. So I appreciate that and how he's just like standing up like no big deal, but he can't get his money. But, that was such a big story, I think, of this year, of people not being able to move their money out of Apple for a bit of time, to the point where they were giving like apology money to certain customers.
Oh, and Sam, I want Doug Brown's job, because like when I experiment, it's with $10, not $1,000. So Doug and I need to have a conversation about some things here.
Yeah, what I loved about it too, in the spirit of the smart, fun, get stuff done, is you'll notice how Doug didn't really hesitate. I love the unscripted aspect of the fact that he just went right. We can say he went for the negative, but he was, he had an experience and he shared it. It was very specific. And to Mary, your point, it was just a great nugget. But I did love the fact Apple's obviously been a very consistent topic that we've had as a company because they've obviously been a disruptor in the space, in some ways a competitor as well. And so that was a good one. And Ron, speaking of kind of people that have been disrupting the space, I'm sort of taken back to the Bank Director Acquire Be Acquired conference from last year. Well, actually, it was this year. Boy, they're right. So it's like all dog years now, but it was earlier this year, which seems like it was a long time ago. I guess they say that would be 7 years in FinTech dog years. But earlier this year at the AOBA conference, Kim Snyder from Clairvis spent some time with us. And Bailee, can you pull up the video on that?
Yes, sir.
Your competitor is not the bank down the street. Competitors for small business is PayPal, Venmo, Square, right? You need to understand that. I think oftentimes community banks, they like to focus on who's next door to them in their industry, and that's really not where their focus should be.
What cool background music.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Bailee.
Of
Well,
course.
Ron, you were there when she said that, and you and I and Jamie Punishel were there. Any thoughts on some of Kim's comments there?
Well, Kim is spot on, but I got to tell you, Sam, this actually reminds me of a story that I actually have used many times, and I stole it from you. You were doing a strategic planning session, you told me a while back, and you asked the management team, "Hey, do you guys see Rocket Mortgage in your space, in your footprint?" And they go, like, "No, we don't see them." Of course, you don't see them, but they've got incredible market share, and so it does. Kim's point kind of echoes a lot of that about how there tends to be a bit of a tunnel vision in banking around who you're competing with. Credit unions think they're competing with other credit unions. Community banks think they're competing with other community banks. And these days, I like to use that Cameron and Mackenzie picture of mine to show how consumers' financial lives just span so many different providers, and they're all competitors in one way or another, even if they're not competing for the exact same product or service. They're competing for engagement. They're competing for mind share.
Ron, as you're saying this, because you're referencing Acquire Be Acquired in parallel to your conversation, I think there's a greater appreciation from the banking space that legacy mindsets, legacy teams, legacy cultures are going to really hold you back. And so when you talk about not really being aware of what's happening outside of your immediate shop, I think that's a real risk that has been addressed by a lot of different people in a lot of different ways throughout 2023.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and point out too that to shout out to the bank director team, because that I remember having just great conversation with Kim and Jamie, Ron, that you and I had. It was such a natural conversation, partly because there was so much for us to talk about from the event. And and I'll give the bank director team another shout out because I'm really looking forward to. We're only about not even like 2 months out, maybe. Or
we're so close. I'm picking my pocket squares.
Oh, there we go. Pockets.
That earns a cackle.
Hold on, who's counting with me? How many do we have? It's like Sam's hats. Hold on, we're still going, Ron.
I think you're on 12 or 13.
Hold on, who's counting at home? Because this could continue for quite some time.
It's like a magician's trick, pulling the handkerchiefs out of us.
Or Ron, I could just do this and just go on the Sam Kilmer side of things and just say, "Oh, it's time for a FinTech hustle."
That's that pocket square thing. That's pathological, Al. You've got that up to a really high level of obsession, but mad respect for that. Actually, tip of my hat on that.
You've got a hat. I've got the pocket squares. Ron's got the snark, and then Mary's got the roller skates. So I feel like we all have our thing.
Yep. And the halls are going to be so bustling at the AOBA conference coming up that we decided we're preparing for our first FinTech Hustle Carpool Edition.
Carpool karaoke.
Bailee's working on the production logistics as we speak with Sue Selecki from COCC, Aaron Simpson from Encore Bank, and Nathaniel Hartley from Mantle are going to join Al and I and Bailee, and we're going to try to fit it's going to be like a mad mashup
We're going to be in a Mini Cooper
cars
driving
with
around the
coffee.
mean streets of Scottsdale, trying to figure out how to, have some fun conversations without running any stoplights.
Yep. So anyway, we're looking forward to that. And I think, another thing, that's, it's not all fun and games in fintech. And I think we've seen over the last, year or so, it's been a tough road out there. And I have to say one of the industry luminaries we had on the podcast, Tom Shen, sort of foretold this before it really hit. And Bailee, if you could tee up the next video clip for me, please.
Absolutely.
The good companies, the ones that are growing 80, 150, 300%, they're still getting incredibly frothy valuation in the mid 20x type of valuation. But on the other end, the company that's sort of doing well, but sort of middle of the road or not as well, they're seeing lower valuation or at times being shut out of fundraising. So bifurcation of the fundraising space. And that's a good thing, and that's a challenge as well.
Here, I went off mute there because my dog Mabel back there was being a little bit more vocal than I would have preferred for that. Didn't want to interrupt that. That's a really good point. I think as one investor at Finovate put it last week, it's like there's still interest in the space. It's just the cost of capital is going up and people are scrutinizing it. The underwriting is just getting a little bit more particular. So really interesting point. And follow the money, huh?
Yeah. As I said, flight to quality, rotation, right? We're seeing some rotation, actually, interestingly, from sort of the more sexy to the less sexy, to more meat and potato, if you will.
Yeah, good stuff. I love the meat and potatoes observation from Tom. I also like that fast talker thing that was going on with me.
Yeah.
Well,
So what I like about Tom is, he says, follow the money, and he actually walks the talk. Like if you know Tom, he could have very happily retired in Palm Springs and just, kicked it on the golf course. Instead, you see his LinkedIn stuff where he's looking for the next great fintech company, and it's global in scale. And, he's not letting geographic boundaries limit his creativity and his curiosity. I just think it's such a cool example of somebody who's built companies, built relationships, networks, and continues to invest in people. And so, chasing great ideas seems to be Tom's MO at the moment.
Yeah.
Sam, quick comment on that
You bet.
too. I think, to Tom's meat and potatoes comment, it's not just meat and potatoes, it's infrastructure and it's banking. I won't name the source on this one, but it's somebody we all know likes to say that the future of banking is fintech. And I like to say that the future of fintech is banking. And that's what the direction we're really moving in here.
Well, Ron, to your point, I don't know if everyone saw the news yesterday that HM Bradley is sunsetting its consumer line, but is now selling to banks.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a common thread. It's like the 3-point plan. One is we're going to blow up the banking business. The second one is we're not going to fight them. We're going to join them. And then the third one is typically it's not going well. We might not be doing anything. It seems like there's been that pattern of either people exiting after the can't beat them, join them thread. But I agree with you, Al, too, about Tom. He's in the middle of everything. He's on a half dozen boards, and I'm following his travels vicariously.
Yeah.
Because he like Stan Viner and others in the business. It's like you run into him at a conference and you see that they have genuine care and joy for what they're doing, trying to help people.
Yep. Great connector.
It's not just some money chase,
100% agree. Great connectors, both of them.
So funding funding and investments, given the VC winter that's going on in the space, that's been one challenging area. I think another challenging area that is not new at all has been integration. And Bailee, I know I believe we have a clip from when I was at the Finovate conference in New York with John Wapsh and Emily Steele, and Emily made some comments.
Yep, here it is.
It's one thing to roll out all of this new technology, but it's being coupled with a conversation around how do you actually integrate it and make it work at a bank? Not just how do I buy it, put it on a shelf and hope and pray, but instead, how do we actually integrate it with our entire ecosystem such that it really can be used, for the long term, if you will.
Any thoughts on that from my co-hosts?
And that seems to be one of the words of the year, and just being super practical. So I think the idea that you've got unlimited runway for creativity has been really poked apart over the last 18 months. And so when you think about how practical and pragmatic like a bank CFO really is, you can understand internally there's business challenges that need to be immediately addressed. And so if you can't come in from the tech side and show how your solution gets to that outcome, so the integration, the implementation, those are components of it. But what is the outcome that the bank is driving towards that the tech company can help with? And to be able to show that you get in there, roll up your sleeves and get it done. That to me seems to be, kind of one of the big underlying themes of this year.
Good stuff. Well, I'll tell you, so if industry funding or investors has been one challenge over the last year, and integration has been certainly been a challenge over the last year, but it's been a challenge since I was a banker, back when I had more hair and fewer hats. I think another sort of third area that comes to mind has been regulatory related. And I believe, Bailee, from back when we had Peggy Mango and Neil Underwood on FinTech Hustle, we've got a clip from Neil that if you wouldn't mind pulling that one up.
Yeah.
Running a bank for 10 years, going to the regulator meetings, and examining the findings. And so it's just the discipline around understanding all that is regulatory compliance. I think many of the fintechs that don't have that experience, quite frankly, underestimate that element and what it means.
Any comments on that, guys?
I have comments and I have thoughts, but you can take what Neil says and you can apply it to what's going on in the BaaS space right now, where you see it just takes one accidental misstep or worse, and things get sideways really fast. And so that understanding of regulatory expectation, compliance burdens, that's fundamental to being in a traditional financial institution. And so, when you think about the different investments that tech companies are making from their hiring, it's not surprising to see all these different open positions for really smart, sophisticated folks who understand what's going on in the regulatory world that we're a part of.
Yeah, I think I was also reminded of someone that we haven't had on the program yet, but I'd like to at some point, Luvleen Sidhu, who was talking about kind of the space and, whether it's BaaS or whatever, but basically embedded, where you have all these different players splitting up the interchange.
Yep.
At the same time that each one of those parties has a compliance head. So you've got 3 companies splitting up the revenue, or 2 companies, or whatever the economics are of the deal. And then you've got 3 compliance officers on any given conference call, all with their own interpretation, all arguing about what's okay. And I think I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but I remember her saying something along the lines of, if I was paraphrasing the dude from The Big Lebowski, this aggression cannot stand. I think he was channeling President George Bush. But anyway, the point is that it's not tenable. It can't hold. You can't have 3 people with 3 different interpretations and splitting up all the money and that be okay. And what I liked about what Neil said was very practical. I also like the fact that Neil is, I've referred to oftentimes as a trifecta, someone who's a banker, a fintech, and an investor. So they can kind of see all those things from all sides. But anyway, I loved having Neil on, and I know he doesn't do a lot of programs like that now. So I was really flattered that he joined us, and thought that was a really salient point. I think also, let's see, Mary, when you and I think I'm trying to remember, we were at maybe at a Finovate. I'm trying to think where we were at, where we had a good session with Derik Sutton from Autobooks and John Finley.
Yeah.
And I know, Bailee, you got a clip here of Derik.
FinTech Tech. Florida, I think.
This one also might have some background music to it, so just be prepared.
Get ready to dance,
Yeah.
gentlemen.
The banking industry will not let go of the past. And there's all of these features and capabilities that are probably used by the minority of the customer base. But there's somebody in the back office that says, we can't let go of these features because we've got X, Y, and Z on it. And what that does is it holds everything back. It makes AI harder. It makes change management harder. It makes implementation of the new technology harder. So everything we hold on to that's not readily used needs to go away. The banks are like the Cheesecake Factory. And you go to the Cheesecake Factory and they got this menu and it's like selection after selection after selection and it's overload. And FinTech's like In-N-Out Burger. And I'm gonna get a burger, I'm gonna get a fries and shake, and I know it's gonna be good. I know exactly what it is. It's simple and easy, and you can like pivot and innovate off that model. I think it's really hard to scale Cheesecake Factory of features, capabilities from a marketing standpoint, from a innovation standpoint, that at some point in time, I think banks are gonna have to say, hey, these things can go away and that's okay. And if there's customers that are impacted, maybe we don't want those types of customers.
Mary, you're right. That was FinX Tech. And it was
Yeah.
kind of fun talking over the music. And it looked like Derik Sutton had a little bit of a Beck thing going on there where he was, he had the microphone.
Two turntables and a microphone.
There it is. Yeah. So, Mary, any thoughts on, I just remember that, that analogy was very cool, but anything that jumped out at you on that?
Yeah, the analogy is really cool. I mean, it's just a really true point. I used to have to like hop around bank websites and it's just like to look for their disclosures to find things out, and it's just like such a like vomit on the page sort of look for many of them. It's so many products. But I will say, like, when you sunset a product, even though it's like small amount of people, those people get really mad. And something that happened during the pandemic was a few of the challenger banks, neobanks, started letting people deposit cash at retailers. So it's just a hard tension, and I don't know what the right answer is, but darlings, it's hard, yeah.
I mean, Mary, as you're talking, though, when I'm thinking about something Ron put on social that just blew up, and it was all around Chime winning the deposit war, and basically it's like, guys, the war has been won by Chime. And I know I'm paraphrasing my friend who's on with us right now, but what's still surprising is how few bankers have actually gone onto Chime's site, have taken out their phone and tried to open an app or open an account with Chime to see the massive difference that exists between what the bank provides and what a company like Chime provides. So I'm not, trying to put Chime up on a pedestal, but Ron, you have clearly rattled some cages because your LinkedIn stuff just blew up when that first came out.
Yeah, and what I'd point to here, though, is it's less about the account opening process as it is about the product. And that's what Derik was really talking about in comparing Cheesecake Factory and In-N-Out Burger, which we don't have any around here. So I'm assuming is really good. But it's a product, and it's a limited product, and that's what they do, and they do it very well. The banks think, well, we have to offer everything and don't have as good a product offering. And you go to Chime, they have a target market, they know who they're serving and or who they're looking for, and the product is geared towards those people. So, Al, even if bank CEOs went to Chime's site and did this, sure, they'd find a great account opening process, but they wouldn't actually notice necessarily that it's the product features that are actually, attracting people by the hordes.
Yeah. I just remember back maybe 5-6 years ago, something that Brian Moynihan, the CEO of B of A, said about why he gets up from his desk as often as he does. And it's just, if you're not putting yourself into these uncomfortable positions and you're seeing what others are doing that you have decided, well, we can't do this, you've artificially set some obstacles, then you can't lead effectively. So, what you're saying, I agree with Ron, but I think it's the responsibility of the industry's leaders to say, hey, are we putting some unintentional rocks in front of our teams? And if so, how do we talk about that so that people aren't prevented from actually taking some chances? Because there's nothing that says what Chime does can't be brought into a regional bank or a credit union that's ambitious and opportunistic.
Yeah, I think, listen, if banks and fintechs selling to consumers and small businesses or commercial, let's just call that B2C, was a big topic this year. Another big topic has been B2B, which is how do enabling fintechs or challengers even, do they sell and partner with banks? And I know, Al, when you and I were recently at the Jam FinTop Summit, we had a chance to sit down at the fire pit with Dan O'Malley from Numerated, as well as Sarah Howell from Infinite. And I know Sarah had some had some comments here. Bailee, if you wouldn't mind running the video of that.
Banks is much more nuanced and much more sophisticated than it was pre-VC winter, when a lot of fintechs were trying to compete with the bank. And now, they're realizing you can abstract the core, but you can't abstract the charter. So you got to play nicely. And so now they're shifting their business model to sell into banks. But what I'm realizing is that it's very hard to sell into banks. You have to know their problems at a granular level.
Any thoughts on that, guys?
Well, other than the fact that we didn't fall into the fire pit and and kill ourselves by accident, because that was not seen in the video, but we were literally next to this raging fire, and it was maybe 35 degrees outside. It looked sunny and warm, but it was actually pretty gnarly.
We had legitimate worry that our microphone, because we actually have a hard cable that goes to the microphone, we had legitimate worry that we might have some meltage right there. But
there's a real insider baseball on the FinTech Hustle.
We did make it out, but I thought that Sarah really kind of captured the essence of the challenge of sometimes I find sometimes it's either bankers or even consultants. I wouldn't say we're dismissive of sales people in the industry. I've worked around salespeople almost my whole career that I've not been a banker, or I was called on them when I was a banker. And it's such a tall order to get someone's attention and to command it in a way, and it's getting harder. And people's time they're more distracted. There's 100 different things coming at them. But I did think that she really nailed it. That it's tougher now, and you just have to be more focused about it, and you have to be really detailed about it. So that captured my thoughts. But I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I keep seeing and hearing from bankers that they could fill their entire week's calendar if they accepted half of the invitations that were credible and relevant to their business. So that just leaves aside all the ones that have no value to them. And so when you think about, just kind of running and performing, you've got to earn the right to change your business. And so you've got to perform every day. That's what a bank executive is dealing with, to be able to introduce some new ideas that could really move their business in a different direction. You're asking for some opportunity to be put to the side. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of tech companies have realized you just can't say, well, we work with banks, we partner with banks, or we're friendly with banks. I thought Sarah's point was really spot on, because to get really detailed and granular and still something very specific, I think that's the hook that gets you a starting conversation. And then, Sam, you and I have talked, you've really got to bring your A game. You cannot waste people's time. You can't just talk about, we've got a great team and great technology, because that's total BS. Everyone has a great team. Everyone has great tech. What's in it for me? Short and sweet and to the point is always appreciated.
Yeah, quick comment on that too, if I can. I think Sarah makes a great point about understanding the banker's problems. I don't know, I think you guys see it as much as I do, vendor decks and presentations, and they all seem to be so generic. They all seem to start with everybody's digital and this is where we're moving towards, but it doesn't get at the challenges and the problems that the banks are facing in dealing with that. It just seems to want to be, hey, we're moving this direction and you have to become digital too. It's like, well, yeah, we kind of know that already. And I'm just so underwhelmed by a lot of these presentations.
Sam is too, Mary is too, right?
I'm very overwhelmed by them. I'm like, this is such a dud experience. But looking back, there was an entrepreneur, and I think he ended up selling to Wells Fargo. It might have been iVerify, but regardless, it was an entrepreneur in a big bank, and it was early in FinTech. And I just remember a panel ended, and he ran up to the Wells Fargo exec, and that is what brought together the introduction, and he ended up selling his product to the bank. I don't know if you could pull that off now, because a lot of my contacts in the industry are like, please stay away from me. I do not want to be sold to, but I do love that story because I do love pluck. But I don't know if it could repeat itself right now.
Well, so Sam and I saw something that I think tech executives should really think about before they present at a conference. So he mentioned we were in Nashville for this Jam FinTop event. They decided to give like a long runway of speakers 2 minutes to talk about their company. And the most effective one was a woman, and her name's escaping me, but maybe Sam remembers, who said, "You're giving me 2 minutes to describe my company. I only need one." And in 1 minute, she nailed it. and left 60 seconds for the next person, who of course took 3 minutes to talk about how great his team was and how great their technology could be. So he was not memorable, whereas this woman, again, even if I'm forgetting her name at the moment, really did an amazing job to get the vibe going.
Yeah. So memorable that neither you nor I can remember the name. We're going to come back to that, and we're going to post it.
We're going to edit Bailee flagged this one as an edit for Sam and Al to make us sound smarter.
Yeah, right. Well,
hold on, let me put my hat back on so I can go back into the smart man cave. Okay, I'm back.
Man. Too funny. And listen, and speaking of be memorable, we were in the Jam FinTop Summit. While we were there at the fire pit, about ready to melt the microphone cable, Vansia from Connect One Bank came up, and she just made a brief mention of her venture on effort that she's working on right now with tech
with
entrepreneurs, as well as their investments that they made in Bowfly, an acquisition that they've made. And like Neil Underwood, Sia is one of those great trifecta type people that's a banker, Connect One Bank, FinTecher and Bowfly, and then also in the investor world, showing up at events like Jam FinTop. And Mary and I actually earlier in the year, after the AOBA conference, had a great session with Daniel Hazley from Aperture and Sia. And I think we have a clip from that, don't we, Bailee?
Yes, we do.
Awesome.
The panel, he got up on stage to tell men to go to the women's reception events. And I just thought, wow, this is such a sincere moment. And I love it.
Yeah.
So I just want to call that out.
I was really proud of him in that moment. As you know, there was a women's luncheon at the conference, Women in Banking, which was awesome. It was a room full of women, but he made a really important point. That conversation needs to happen on main stage, and I'm really happy Michelle sort of made that happen. It was impromptu. It wasn't planned.
Yeah, Mary, any thoughts on that?
I have thoughts on that, Sam. First of all, to the other point, this was an amazing moment because it was a really sincere moment. Frank did get up on stage and had just a candid thought up there, and you just don't really see that happen too often at conferences. But I just underscore the point. Everyone needs to be in the room to make things happen.
Well, let me do a little cross promotion of the Plugged In podcast that Sam alluded to earlier. So, Plugged In is a sister to FinTech Hustle from Cornerstone. And Steve Williams and I just had a conversation with Maria Tedesco, who's the president and COO at Atlantic Union Bank in Richmond. So, about a $24 billion institution. We talked about this very thing. How do you help women rise up in the leadership ranks? And not to paraphrase Maria too long, but she said, it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just hers. She's got to model the behavior, but you need to build a team. And so she's got a great CEO in John Asbury, who is locked arms with her and says, we've got an opportunity to really set an example. And so whether it's at a conference like Sia is describing, whether it's in an office, like Atlantic Union would have, I think if we just continue to talk about this and say, hey, it can feel awkward, but it's really uncomfortable that we don't have the number of female executives in positions at tech companies, at banks, at credit unions that we should, when you just look at the country that we're a part of. And so instead of hesitating and pulling back, I think it's everyone's opportunity and responsibility to say, we all know smart folks. Some of them are women, and they should have opportunities to do some really amazing things. And if we can help advance them, then we should be doing that. And so I really appreciate what Sia does, but I appreciate Frank Sorrentino, her CEO at Connect One, who has been very outspoken about the need for diversity, inclusion, and it's not just a check the box type activity. It's something he thinks makes the business stronger, and I have to say I totally agree with him.
Well, and one last thing here on that is, as we go to the next one, is one of the things I love about Sia as well. She's fun. So this is both work and it's fun, and so too you are, Mary. And so I also want to say, Mary, I saw in that segment there you were also wearing, I believe you had some disco earrings there, and so I have to.
Are you wearing them now?
To raise my
I know.
Are you wearing them now, Mary?
This is why I was frazzled this morning. I was trying to hide from all the light coming into my apartment. I am not wearing them now, Al. I have failed today, but I didn't fail then.
Next year when we do the part 2 of this.
But in the spirit of keeping it fun, as you might imagine from this, since it's an unscripted and many times in the hall recorded, so things don't always go well. Sometimes we have kind of like, there's a few bloopers out there. And so in the spirit of fun too, I think we had a twice over Redux episode. We had to film it twice with Kara Schultz of CSI, Mike Triggiano of Velocity Solutions, and Ron and me. And I think we have a clip from one of those segments. Do we not, Bailee?
We do.
Ron, there's no one and done. I mean, as fast as you can use that term loosely, but the cores are rolling out updates on, as are the other fintechs, on a pretty regular basis. And if you're going to provide that kind of integration, it's ongoing. It's ongoing development and maintenance and support.
What you may not have been able to hear in the background was there was some. I think we even filtered
Did
out
we
some of it.
Recreate it. It was
Yeah.
He was pounding the desk out of enthusiasm.
It was so funny because it was the retake too. Like we had done it in person at an AFT event, I think, and there were some issues with. I'm sure it was on my setup of my microphone or something. So we refilmed it, and there's somebody pounding on the wall. I don't know if Ron, did we ever determine whether it was just kids pounding on the wall or it was construction?
He's having work done to his house. He couldn't avoid the fact that that's when they were there and when we had scheduled this. And so, yeah, there was construction going on at his house. It was loud. It was disconcerting.
Did you send him a bucket hat as a sign of appreciation, Sam?
I did.
You sent him a hard hat.
Right now.
Here we go.
Hard hat.
I tipped my hat to Mike and his construction woes mid-session. I can relate because my dog Mabel back there I had to put a lock back there on the door because she always seems to know when we're doing one of these things. But listen, guys, I want to take just a second and Mary and Al and Ron, I want to thank you guys for being gracious co-hosts with your time and having a lot, not just today, but in all these episodes. It's very much been a team effort. Certainly, I want to thank all my and all of our guests that we've had thus far. And I mentioned we've got some great programs coming up with Sam Paxson from Co-op Solutions and Nathan Baumeister from Z Suite. I mentioned Nathaniel Harley, Aaron Simpson, and Sue Selecki coming up. So we've got some great episodes coming up. But I also want to take just one more moment and say thank you to Bailee for everything you've done to make the production of this a joy. And it's just a lot of fun for our guests to see you on camera right before and after we're doing our work. And so I wanted to make sure that you were visible to everyone to just know that who's actually making this work. So thank you for that, Bailee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. It's a blast to be here. I'm having a ton of fun.
And thanks for joining us on this episode of FinTech Hustle Flashback Edition. Hope you all have a great, set of holidays, and we'll see you out there on the road.